going to ask some questions. So I'm going to start, Dr. Cloud. So here's my first question to kick us off. And go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and they'll come to you. Dr. Cloud, I think one of the things that happens as a leader is trust is broken, right? And all of us have had our trust broken many times, right? And when trust is broken, then what we do is we don't trust anymore, right? It's like it's broken down, and then it's almost like I can't trust anybody because they're going to do what that person did. And so you just see so many leaders end up just going it alone because that's it's the safe way. How would you encourage those of us that have those wounds to begin that process of healing so that we can trust again?
Well, it's a really important question because, we really do, when our trust gets broken, we're like a turtle. They go into their shell, right? It's a natural reaction. A couple of things to look at, though. One is your ability to trust again is really going to depend on, what's the best way to say this? How, don't want to use that word. Was that the only, let's put it this way, was that the only person that you were really trusting? Okay, because here's the thing. We were not meant for a dyadic relationship, meaning two, a dyad. The only dyadic relationship in life is the first year of life in infancy. That's where one person holds everything that you need. Now, somebody might different people sit in that chair, but your whole world is that one caretaker, right? Well, then, after that, you begin to take in, it goes to both parents and the group and the family and then the schoolyard and this and the other. People that have horrible trustings, most of their trust, because their whole account was with one person, and they're not in a circle of trust. Because when we're in a circle, if somebody's got, if somebody's got a close group of friends and this and that, they have a betrayal by one person, they got somewhere that they're trusting that can sustain that. So the first thing I've got to do is, have I organized my life in a circle? I hear leaders all the time say, it's lonely at the top. It better not be. Because that's not the created order, and it's not the way God is. God's at the top, but he's not alone. Jesus prayed that you might be one as we are one, and that the love may be what the Father and he and the Trinity, what they've had forever. And if a leader is leading, and there's everything just on this one relationship, that's a problem. Secondly, you've got to ask yourself, what wound is this touching? If we're having problems trusting after being betrayed more than normal, it's probably dinging something that we haven't gotten healed in yet. If somebody's got abandonment issues or betrayal issues or this and there, they're going to be having confirmation bias in their head and seeing mistrust, and nobody's trustworthy because some other wound, and that's really important. But then going forward, what's got to happen is, if I'm going to trust that person again, we got to work through these things before I trust you again. Do I hear from them? They really get it of what this did to us or what it did to the team. Do they really understand it? And are we starting to sense that in little ways it's not about them anymore? And do they understand how what they did was all about them and they didn't? So we got to work through this thing again, and then we got to incrementally get to a place where we can gradually begin to trust.
Yeah, so good. Thank you.
If you look at the book Trust, the first probably 2/3 I've heard about all these dynamics, but then the last third is about repairing trust after it's been broken, for teams or marriages or whatever.
Yeah, I just think it's so important to your point of saying, number one, it's recognizing that you need a circle of people around you. You can't go it alone. Number two is realizing that there might be a pain point that this is triggering that needs to be healed. And number three, to continue to include this process of rebuilding that trust around us?
Yeah, one of the worst things we do, let me turn this a little bit because I can't see everybody over here. One of the worst things we do is, is from both sides of the equation, is somehow if they're really sorry and they're really committed, I promise I won't do this again. Well, that'll gain us forgiveness, but it might not gain us trust. So sorry is good for the past, but we gotta know what kind of firm ground we're on to trust going forward. And it may have some time to build a track record to reestablish incremental trust. How many of you have ever adopted a dog from a rescue place that was abused? If you've ever done that, some of them, they'll stay over in the corner until about it might take a month or so before they gradually, ultimately they're going to end up in your lap. But it didn't happen the first day.
Question here.
So I guess my question is, I work with a lot of young people, and we're seeing the consistent
Can you hold the
issue.
mic a little closer to it?
I deal with a lot of young people, and we're dealing with consistent issues with coachability. And as you're talking, it made me think of the attachment and whether they have trust issues is why they can't listen.
I'm sorry. We got a little echo. Will you speak a little more slowly?
Absolutely. So I work with young people, and we see a lot of non-coachable kids. They don't listen. They're overly confident in their own beliefs, and it's hard to teach them. And I'm just curious if there's strategies that relate to trust that could help us get them in a better place.
Yeah, so they're fools. That's what the Bible says, right? No, it does. It literally says that. It says that there's kind of three categories of behavior. One is the wise person, and that's someone that listens to instruction, and they're grateful for it. Correct a wise person, it says, and they will love you for it. They will change. They will do better. So what we do is we build into people that are actually listening and taking the coaching. There's a second group of people called the fool or the mocker. And it says, do not confront a fool because they'll hate you for it. They get defensive. And well, what do you mean? And you get pushback. So the third category is evil, and you just want to protect yourself. But what I would, if I'm coaching a group like that, I would actually, at some point, I would say, okay, if we're going to get better, we're going to go from here to there. How many of you are there today? Well, if you got any hands that come up, then say, great, go out and do it, and if you don't pull it off, you're fired. Well, they're not ready. They know they're not ready at some level, right? So if we're not ready, then what we're going to do is we're going to get ready. And this coaching thing is going to be a get ready kind of process. Now, let me tell you guys about two different hats that you can wear at any moment. One is that you can use the coaching and be wise. The other is you can resist it and not take it in and use it. That's your job. I can't control that. What I can control is who gets to go forward. And so a group enforces its norms, and our norm here is that we're coachable. And I will be grading you not only on your performance, but on your coachability. That will disqualify you. So first thing I do is I set the expectation and try to build that culture. And then I would ask them, so tell me about a time when you've been coached well. What was present? What did they do? When you had to learn something, you were coached well. What did the coach do? Because I want to do that well with you. Tell me about a time when it didn't work well. Well, they were like this. Okay, well, I'm not going to be like that. We're not going to be like that. And then we're going to get some behavioral norms that we're going to use with each other. And then we're going to talk about how are we going to measure whether or not you're taking in this coaching. So I would set the expectation. Nobody will survive here if you're not coachable, because we want a learning culture. So sometimes we got to coach them into coachability. And sometimes you won't be able to because of their character. And it's great to find that out early and not after you've promoted them. that, no?
Dr. Henry Cloud, thank you so much for the book Boundaries. I think it was, well, for me, it was wonderful. So I'm going to ask a question about sophisticated trust relationships, using boundaries a little bit because John Townsend, right?
Little louder.
Yes, yes. I'm going to ask a question about
Boundaries.
sophisticated trust relationships with partners because John Townsend, right? He's a partner.
Yeah.
And there must have been trust there, right, for
great
your
trust.
collaboration.
Yeah.
And I hear you speak more on boundaries than John Townsend, right?
You hear me speak more on what?
On boundaries.
On boundaries, on the book, than John Townsend does, right?
It's not my week to watch him, so I don't know how much he's...
Oh, well, yeah, but
I'll ask him.
so I'm just curious about tips of finding a John Townsend when you collaborate on such an important book that you're basically going to talk about for the rest of your lives. There must be a trust relationship, right, between, and I just want
Still is, great trust.
Yeah.
So talk about what with John?
some tips.
How do you find another peer leader,
Oh, okay.
sophisticated
How do you
trust that
find
you
one?
can?
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you how John and I first bonded. He had gone to seminary before graduate school, so I was a year ahead of him in graduate school, even though he's an old fart and way older than me. And so I was a second year student, and I volunteered to move new students in. And so I got assigned to John. And so I'm moving his junk in to his apartment. And there's this box of, this will date me, cassette tapes. And a bunch of them say Hendrix, kind of abbreviated. And I looked at it, oh my gosh, John, you like Hendrix? He goes, yeah, he was my favorite professor at Dallas Seminary. And I'm like brokenhearted. He goes, what? And I said, So I was couldn't really say this around Christians. I thought you meant Jimi Hendrix. He goes, you like Hendrix? I said, yeah. He said, come here, I'll show you the good stuff. That's how we first met. Now, it's a funny story, it's a true story, but I think if you're talking about somebody that you're really going to be building things with, there's going to be 3 or 4 components to those. One is their character. And I didn't collaborate with John. We wrote that book, what year was that? We wrote that book after we had been friends, and it went from there to we found out we understood deeply. And I was in a PhD program, theology and psychology, and John was the only one that loved both of those disciplines as much as I did. It was hard to find. Most of them were there for the psychology, but John had a THM, 4-year seminary degree, and I had a lot of that stuff. And theology was my first love. And so we started talking about that, and I gained a deep understanding of how much he understood that. And so then we became roommates, and, sitting around, at the end of the day, we would be in theological and psychological, theoretical debates, and this was all the way through graduate school. And then John went on internship and across the country, and I stayed in LA, and he came back, and several years after that, and we were still, and then we started doing some workshops in churches together and all that. And then when I started the hospital company, there was only one person that I would have trusted to build that with. And so all the writings came out of all that work. The point being, character, his makeup, competency. It took a while to see that. And his clinical competency as well as theological. But the third one, and this may be kind of what you're getting at, the chemistry has to be there. competency, character, and chemistry. If you're going to build something at that level, John and I wrote, I don't know, a lot of books together. We built a hospital system and treatment centers, 40-something cities in several states, and we ran that company together for a long time. If you're not enjoying those people, if the chemistry's not right, life's too short to hate every day. And so those have really, really all got to gel.
That's great.
Thank you. My question is, should I continue working for my employer if I don't trust him? And how can I glorify God at my workplace when I don't trust
Are you
in
getting this?
Yeah.
my company?
Asking the question is, should I continue working someplace if I don't trust my employer? And how can I glorify God in an atmosphere like that?
You have a friend named Moses? You're in Egypt, right? And you need a Moses to come take you to the promised land. That was a metaphor? Well, there's a number of options. You could raise a bunch of money and buy the company. This is a hard question because there are so many factors that go into, I wrote a book called Necessary Endings. And there are so many factors that go into when we actually get to the decision of needing, it is necessary that I end this, that I end my employment or I end the relationship or, shut something down. And if you find yourself in that situation, a lot of times this is multi-factored and contextual in that it's really important for you to be in touch with why am I there? Okay? Why am I there? What's the purpose? The bigger purpose and the utilitarian purpose of, does this serve my bigger purpose? Sometimes we can be in a context where we don't trust the people, but that context really serves us for the bigger purpose of where we're going to go past whenever we're there. Or it can serve the purpose because my actual purpose is being in a place where it might be toxic, because I might have been called to the people in that place who are suffering as well. See, but we got to know our why, okay? That's really, really important. We can go through a lot if we know our why, or we can also say, enough of this, I'm moving on. That's one factor to look at. Another factor is many times in an organization, I might not trust the leaders, but we don't all live on that floor. I run a department, or I'm in a department that's doing really, really good things, and these people are great. And I can get my why done here, and sometimes, and I've seen in some organizations, that's done so well that it begins to affect the rest of the organization with goodness. That's another thing to think about. Thirdly, I would ask myself the question, is this being injurious to me anywhere, in any way? Or is my immune system strong enough to handle these germs? Okay? All of you are here today, and guess what? You have sucked in so many germs today. You wiped your mouth, and you rubbed your eyes, and you talked to somebody, and they breathed the flu on you, and I mean, it's just, this is not a trustworthy environment unless your immune system can handle it. And obviously, you can. There are some people who maybe what illness they're going through, or, they've got a autoimmune issue or whatever. They're quarantined today. They're in ICU. And there's no visitors because a little toxicity would really injure them. So I think you've got to ask yourself, am I getting dinged? Am I getting upset or this and that? Or am I literally getting injured by being here? So there's a lot of factors that go into this. I don't just think we run from something. And I don't think we necessarily, always have to stay in things that are not good. But and then thirdly, ask myself, while I'm here, what can I let this situation teach me and complete in me and build me up in? First thing is, I'd like to get so resilient that I can handle this even if I hate it, unless it got really bad, right? But if you go to the scriptures, here's what we know about, it's one of the big things in our culture today that's a problem. We have a culture today, especially in the parenting genres, some of them that you're hearing, where frustration or struggle or difficult challenges are going to, hurt this little kid's self-esteem, to make them struggle and make them grapple. And we want them to always just feel, no, we need challenge and we need a bar higher than us to get to the next level. But what we're trying to do a lot of times in a lot of parenting too, and everybody else's context this happens, if it's too hard for somebody, we lower the bar. So everybody feels comfortable. God may, and I don't know because I don't know you or your situation, God may have you in a prescribed weight room where He wants you to learn something and get stronger, and this difficult boss is there to teach you something in your life. Let me give you a couple of examples. Romans 5:1 says that trials produce character, which produces hope. Now, character is our makeup. The trials, the struggle, actually does that. And the Greek word there that's used for trial is a word that is an externally imposed difficult situation from which there is no escape. So we've got to get better in order to be able to work with that idiot, right? But sometimes we want to run from every situation. Let me give you another. James 1 says, "Consider it all joy when you encounter various trials, because the perseverance through it will make you complete, lacking in nothing." So before I leave, I want to know, have I learned everything from this situation, other than he's an idiot? Have I learned everything I can from working for this idiot that I can learn, and now it's time to move on? So there's a number of things I would look at. And find a best friend at work.
Can we thank Henry Cloud one more time?
Thank you, guys.